Hey everybody, welcome to episode 116 of The Green Life. In today's episode, I'll be speaking to Jasmijn de Boo, who is a Dutch veganism and animal rights activist, but also, and foremost, the global CEO of Pro Veg International. We're going to talk about her journey, her story, her reasons why she promotes veganism. She's such an animal rights activist. But we're going to talk about the amazing work that ProVeg does internationally and how you also can get involved. So please stay tuned. Now, before we get there, I want to give a big shout out to Nama Well for the J2 juicer. You guys know I love my juicer, so I asked Nama for a 10% discount to share with you. So it's in the show notes. But I'm also an affiliate of Dr. Morse's Herbs, New Zest, and Wunda Workshop. So I have the links for you as well as the discounts code that you can use. And please do so, because when you buy from them, you help this podcast stay afloat, because every little bit helps to pay for the platforms that we use here. So guys, I'm very excited about this. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation with my friend Jasmijn de Boo. Hello Jasmijn, thank you so much for joining me on The Green Life today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so honored because I know you're a very busy lady and I have a lot of projects, and for you to make the time to speak to me, it's really an honor, but also your work is important and I really feel like I want to share it with the audience, because I think sometimes we're not really in touch with what goes behind what we see in the mainstream, and a lot of times actually the work that people like you do doesn't even get mainstream attention because it's very against a society that is built on another tangent. So I really want to talk about this, and obviously for people that are listening, they heard the introduction about the work that you do for ProVeg. You're the CEO, and I'd love to first of all start with your journey into, your personal journey into becoming more aware of not just animal rights, but like your own choices when it came to your nutrition and to your choices that you make every day, and how that consciousness switched on for you.
Yeah, great. No, it's really good to be sharing my story. I think everyone has like a similar journey that they became aware at some point in their lives, whether that was younger or later. It doesn't actually matter. But for me, it was when I was 12 years old and I cycled to school, high school, and I saw a truck going past with pigs on their way to the slaughterhouse. And they were screaming, and we were just talking, about pain and suffering. And I think that is really touching, and it really reaches your soul, right? And you're 12 years old and you're suddenly thinking, that's not right. And so I became angry at the driver, and I was with my friend and we were talking, and suddenly the penny dropped. But if I still eat meat, then I'm contributing to that suffering, and I don't need it, actually. I can't justify that. So I became vegetarian. And of course, it was a difficult time. Back in the 80s, it was not that common yet. And people were always kind of mocking me. And I was the first in the family, first in high school to be taking such a step. And you're a real outlier, that's something that you have to deal with. And then a few years later, I met other vegetarians when I went to university, and I was 18, and I thought, oh, I'm not the only one. It's actually more common to kind of have this belief in trying to protect animals. So I became a little bit active in a small student club, nothing like what's happening today. But back then that was already great, because you need that social support, right? You can't always make all these choices on your own. You need to be strong, but you also need a social support network. And so I was vegetarian for a very long time. I was convinced I wanted to help animals. I studied animal management and animal welfare at master's level in Edinburgh. So I knew about all the animal welfare problems, including in dairy and egg production, but I still ate them. So there's this disconnect and cognitive dissonance of your actions not matching your beliefs and your knowledge. Until I met my current husband, Andrew Knight. And when I met him in 2002, he was already vegan, and we were talking about it. And kind of I knew at a cognitive level that, I should not be eating dairy and eggs either. I was already switching to the most ethical, welfare-friendly eggs and dairy, but still, it was part of my diet. And I asked, and he said, well, I want a vegan girlfriend. And I said, oh, is vegetarian not good enough? He said, well, not really. So he was quite open about that. And I thought, he's right, actually. But until that point, I hadn't really met many vegans, only two others, one colleague and one former master's student. And you don't really know that it's possible, that there are products out there. And I started experimenting. I thought, oh, it's actually 22, no, let me just think, 23 years ago, I made the decision to go vegan. And even though I lived in the south of the Netherlands, where, it's full of animal products and intensive agriculture, there was a whole food shop, there was hummus, baba ganoush, other kind of guacamole things. And I thought, okay, there was not much else. There weren't many products. Like Vivera might have been one of the first vegetarian vegan products. And I made it work. And then I moved to London a year or two later in 2004, where suddenly my eyes were open, like, oh my God, this is vegan Mecca here. All these restaurants offering vegan options and many more shops where you can buy products. And that was 2004. And fast forward 21 years, and suddenly you have so much more choice now, which makes it much easier for many more consumers to either go fully vegan or at least incorporate more plant-based products in their diet. So yeah, that was kind of my personal journey, and I became the CEO of the Vegan Society in 2011, and since then I've been an executive leader in this field, and really believing that that's where I can make the most difference and change. I've moved from animal welfare to promoting plant-based food and diets, because I think that's where the biggest change can be made.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so much to unpack there before we move on, because I feel like you brought up some really important points that I feel like we can talk about. The first thing is the approach of going vegetarian versus vegan. I have these conversations quite a lot because I'm a nutritionist and a naturopathic practitioner. So when I talk to my clients, there are many views out there, especially when it comes to health, what's healthy, what's not, especially when it comes to dairy. Raw dairy is good for you. And I'm not saying as a nutritionist, and you know this from studying food, we can absolutely find amazing nutrients in these products. But the question is always, do we need them as humans? And can we live without them? And I feel like that's one part. And the other part is people really think that cows just make milk because they do. And I'm like, actually, they need to be pregnant. And their baby doesn't get the milk so that we can get it. So again, right there is the problem. And one thing I'm less strict about, not for myself, but when people have chickens, and if their chickens lay eggs in their backyard and they eat them because they're not hatching, I'm less concerned about that, because I'm like, actually, it could become a byproduct, and okay, you want to eat it. If you don't have any, problems with cholesterol, I think is fine, But equally, that's like 0.001% of the population, so it doesn't make a good argument for having them. And that's where people really get lost. It's like, but I'm vegetarian, so I'm helping, and actually, the dairy and chicken industry, whether it's for hatching eggs or for meat, actually it's one. They're not separate, and one is not more ethical than the other. And I think if you had to explain this to somebody the way that ProVeg would share it, in a way that is like, hey, you know what? Those are better choices for you than that, because how would you say that so that people can really click?
Yeah, so we try not to be too kind of vegan in that sense. We try to really focus on the benefits of eating more plant-based foods generally, and all our recipes are, of course, vegan. But we're not saying that that is the best and that's the only way, because then we know from kind of behavioral studies that we might put people off and then they're not willing to try even. So not 100% of our work is completely vegan. So, for example, we work in schools and we try to change menus, and most of them will be changed to plant-based, vegan, but some of them are still, containing some eggs and cheese. And we also have the V label, of course, that is mainly focused on vegan products, but also includes some vegetarian products. So in that sense, I think we need to, I agree with you, ethically there's no difference. But of course, in this society, we also need to be pragmatic. And if we can switch people along the way, to consume fewer animal products and be more conscious about it, then they will often make the connection at some point. But yeah, we focus on, like in our articles, both focus on consumer, but also in our B2B Food Hub, for example, on articles that talk about the new precision fermentation in dairy, and that you can really get a similar taste and texture. Or we talk about egg replacements, and what is exciting about plant-based egg replacements. We don't really talk so much about the ethical animal issues. That's, as an organization, we made that choice because there's so many other animal organizations that do a great job in that, or vegan organizations. We really wanted to focus on the kind of food system, a deeper kind of system of consumers, policies, regulations, companies, food services. And we find that opens doors a lot. We were really talking to the biggest food producers, the United Nations, etc., where our voices are heard, whereas if we were an animal organization, it might be a bit more difficult to have that kind of conversation.
You are so right, yeah.
Yeah, you could say like it is an important part of conversation, and I agree, but ProVeg focuses a bit less on that. So we do have a page about animals and animal welfare, but it's not our main kind of talking point or selling point. We start with the tastiness and delicious food, how good it is for health and environment, and then people are more open to consider it.
You are so right, and I'm currently working on a project that is really dear to my heart, and I approached it the same way, because you probably imagine, as you have been to Portugal, because we met at Pro Veg, that it's a very traditional country, and their tradition is to have quite a bit of meat. Actually, I saw a survey when and at the last year's or 2 years ago, actually, the Leguminas conference that was organized by now Pro Veg Portugal, where the statistics said that people in Portugal eat about 33% more meat than is even recommended by the government. So you can see that there is a very big approach, like very big attraction to having animal products. That's what they know. And actually they eat so little and few variety of vegetables. They eat the same thing quite a lot. So that, that alone can be a study about my microbiome, for example. But I did the same. Like when I started Elevate the markets, I was like, I don't want to call them vegan markets because you are cutting out such a big segment. So I'm going to call them plant-based. And of course, only products that are vegan really can access the market, but we don't label it that way. And it was a conscious choice, just like yours, to be like, I really want to talk about the ethics. I really want to talk about how we can be better, but I don't want to put people off, because unfortunately in the vegan environment there is also the activism, which is beautiful. I mean, we need it, but it can be quite aggressive for some people, especially when you mentioned living in dissonance, and we all really do, because we grew up with some beliefs that are passed by generations and generations and culture. And when somebody shows us the hard truth, sometimes it's a shock to the system and we go into that rejection mode. So I'd rather embrace people and make them more friendly to the options, that we can be kinder in many different ways, and the choices that we have a bigger impact. And then at some point that will trickle down to the fact that actually, hey, animals are affected too, and this is what really happens. And really try to have the consciousness of each person kick in rather than pushing it on them. So I completely agree and align with how you're approaching this with ProVeg, absolutely. And I think it's needed now, because it's really easy to make counter arguments, and the internet can really go against good work by being, so like you can present any argument really now. So it's really good to be moderate. But the interesting thing is that, and I had obviously Andrew on the podcast, you're married to somebody that really is about welfare and ethics, and how actually our animal industry really impacts everything, and we should allow much more open-mindedness around vegan food for pets. And I love that, because like you balance each other out with different things, and you also have access to obviously research and well-studied cases, which is not the case for everybody. So you can hold on, both sides of the argument when you're talking to somebody, even though you obviously are aiming at having more a nutrition and positive approach to food through ProVeg. So I wanted to mention that, because it's really key. And I'm also hoping that you will come to the conference I'm organizing in October, because it would be nice to actually bring back the old Pro Veg crew for the new Elevate.
It was amazing. It was such a nice conference. Like, all the people were so on the same path and collaborative, and the vibe was all really positive, and I really loved it. I went 2 years, I think 2018 and 19, I believe.
Yes.
And then, yeah, of course, the pandemic happened, but it was really nicely organized by Yvonne and you and the team.
Yeah, I loved it too. It was a pleasure to be there too. So, okay, so I really feel like this is a great vision as to what you do, and a nice explanation, and people can understand it. So I'd like to know more about ProVeg, though, as an association. How did it come about, and were you the first one that kicked it off, or did you take it off from moving from the Vegan Society?
I can't take credit for the beginning. Basically, that was Sebastian Joy and Tobias Leenaert, and they got together already 2012 or so. And I was part of a conversation 2013. So I have been part of conversations early on, but it was their idea, and they had this idea of being like a global movement, because there's of course global organizations for the environment like Greenpeace, or for human rights, Amnesty International, but there wasn't anything like for the plant-based movement. And of course, there's the IVU, the International Vegetarian Union, but their remit is a bit different. It's more bringing organizations together and just, more of a social function rather than an advocacy function. And so in 2016, they were starting to talk about it a bit more. And I got involved after I left the Vegan Society in June 2016, nearly 5 years after I'd been at the Vegan Society. And I thought it's time for a new challenge. And so I started looking into setting up the UK chapter, and at that time we basically only started with the foundations in Germany, and Vegetarian Society of Germany, VBO, became ProVeg Germany as the first kind of entity, and there were talks with Poland, Spain, and as I said, the UK. So that was how it all started in 2017. But I got an offer to become the CEO of Safe for Animals in New Zealand. And so I went to New Zealand in October 2016, where I worked for 1.5 years. And that was a great experience as well. And that focused not just on promoting plant-based diets, but also animal rights issues like live export of animals, rodeo, killing of wildlife, and other issues. So I both learned a lot and hope to contribute to some of the successes there as well. But I came back in April 2018, and I suggested, now that ProVeg has grown a bit, in the meantime, 2 more countries had joined, the Netherlands and South Africa, so 6 countries. I said I can help and support the international network, and that was really great. So I did that for a few years, and we grew further. And then about 2 years ago, I became the CEO when Sebastian decided to step aside and launch his own Kickstarting for Good incubator for non-profit ideas. So you should also maybe talk to him at some point, because it's fascinating to hear what he has to say. He's serial social entrepreneur, as he calls himself, always kickstarting new initiatives. So he thought I might as well set up an incubator like that. So since then, I've been leading Pro Veg International, and it's an interesting concept because we have legal entities in every country, so they're independent, autonomous, but we're trying to work as one organization, and it's often we're agreeing to the same guiding principles, the strategy, alignment, but there's room for some freedom within the framework. We can't dictate from the top, this is what you need to do, because it may not be relevant for that country. We have many initiatives that we want to scale up and internationalize, either by doing it in other ProVeg countries, but sometimes we also look to, for example, our grantee network, which is much bigger. That's like 90 plus countries around the world where we've got organizations that we're supporting. So an example is, for example, the Dietary Guidelines Initiative, which is not a public campaign. It's very much behind the scenes and policy, and working with governments and nutrition advisors to change the dietary guidelines of a country, which are really important because they can determine a lot of different policy and social signaling, etc. And that's the kind of thing where we want to kind of scale up, because we see the benefit of that being global. We have consumer-facing campaigns like Veggie Challenge, really encouraging people to go veg or vegan or reduce meat for 30 days. They can choose the different levels in the app. They get supported. That can be quite easily adapted to local context with local recipes. And maybe we'll have a Portuguese version at some point. I think there's talk of adapting it to Portugal, but it's now in 6 or 7 languages, I believe, and running from as diverse as European countries as well as Malaysia and Nigeria. So it's really a versatile tool to get people on board and get them to experience what it's like to eat more plant-based. But it's a smaller part of our work. So the biggest part of our work is actually corporate engagement, institutional engagement, working with food service providers, policy, both at national EU level and United Nations. And as I mentioned, also the grantees, the movement building, working with other organizations to amplify all the work that we do. So it's really exciting. I think there's finally a bit of momentum going. On one level, it's challenging. Of course, you alluded to that with the internet being full of misinformation and people's opinions counting almost more than facts. It's really challenging. But at the same time, I think governments and corporates and food service providers are more and more convinced about, at least the environmental impacts. And they want to do something that can reduce their footprint, and that's often a way to get in, to change recipes, to change menus, and rebalance the protein that is on offer. So we call it, we have especially worked with retailers on the protein tracker, looking at what they sell, and we're trying to influence the proportion of plant-based foods as opposed to animal-based protein. And that was really successful in the Netherlands. We're now working in other countries, Germany, Belgium. We're going to look to kind of increasing that, because retailers have such an outsized impact on what people buy and what's out there. And we're working in China with students and companies to come up with innovative ideas for new products, especially alternatives to local cuisine. Like, that's really important, that we don't always impose kind of Western products into Asian markets, but they have their own versions. And I was very honored to present the kind of winning award a couple of weeks ago to students from Dutch and Australian universities working on a plant-based beef version and a self-heating box that could actually be warming up your meal in a sustainable way, taking up less energy. It's very creative and innovative, and gets people thinking about potential, career options. Do they want to go into food technology and focus more on alternative protein, for example, or maybe marketing if they enjoyed that aspect of the project. I think it's a great way to kind of inspire the new generation of students, and also get companies kind of involved to encourage this innovation. And some of these products have actually resulted into new products that went to market, like the one that went to market in Thailand a couple of years ago, and another one I think they're now discussing. So it's a really good way to showcase what students are capable of. So it's a really wide variety of things that we're doing, depending on the country, the region. But overall, what we're trying to do is really change the food system at a deeper level. So not just changing consumer demand. It really needs to be easy to find those products in the food environment, whether that's supermarket shelves or when you go out for dinner, or policies that incentivize more plant-based products rather than reducing the price of animal products. That's really skewing the market.
It is. Oh my gosh, you are tapping onto so many amazing things. First of all, this is really, it reminded me of a conversation. I was doing a video for Instagram about, people ask me, don't you feel like AI is going to take your job? And I'm like, there is an element of humanity that AI will never be able to take. And I think we can be smart in using AI, like the apps that we create and so on, but that touch that comes only from feeling, that will never be replaced, no matter how much consciousness they want to put in a robot. So when you were talking, I was just thinking these amazing innovations that people are coming up with really come from that creativity that is very human. And I think it's needed because, of course, the traditional workplace is changing. And so if we can inspire students to become activists in a positive way while also being entrepreneurial, but also giving back, that is the future. Instead of just taking the traditional way that baby boomers have done it forever, but actually really thinking about the impact and really creating things that really make life easier, but also are positive and inspire. And that's really where we have to go. So I loved how ProVeg is very holistic in the approach, because I think sometimes we get so focused on this idea that we have to be expert in one thing and we forget the bigger picture. But life is holistic. Like, just like health, everything is encompassing different elements. You can't just separate and think, I'm focusing on this and screw the rest. You just can't do it that way. So that's probably why I really resonated a lot with ProVeg since I met you, because I feel it's just that, right? It's got this massive impact that really taps into different things. And I didn't even know about these projects with the students. So I'm really happy to hear. And yeah, it's the future. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a discussion that we often have internally, like because organizations always talk about their strategy and where they're going. And we often think, oh God, are we too much of a jack of all trades? Like, being all over the place, or should we more specialize more like some organizations? And we always come to the same conclusion that no, we should stay the course, because we do have this important role to play as an ecosystem orchestrator. We are in touch with consumers, we are in touch with small companies, startups like in the incubator, but also big ones like really multinationals, where we can have big change. It's harder sometimes, and if there's budget and things go well, then it's great. But now it's a little bit challenging, as you know, with it, all the inflation has really affected both small companies, but also larger ones. Mm-hmm. But we keep engaging, and we keep having a dialogue. We have the dialogue with meat companies and dairy companies to change them to become more plant-based or add more products in their portfolio. So we're really trusted and seen as a credible partner, and not as an outside campaigning organization, which is also important. But I'm saying we really try to be that ecosystem orchestrator, bringing partners together at our events, or by attending other events and speaking. I'm going to the Netherlands in a couple of weeks, speaking at a company's event about future food. So we do this all the time, and that's really appreciated by the industry. And I think they will then go on and take their responsibility. And that then helps again with policy, because the policymakers, of course, care about citizens, but they care even more about business, as we know. So they have a big voice. And so if we have that role as an ecosystem orchestrator, then we can be the best, most impactful organization I think we can be. Of course, there are other really specialized ones that focus on food tech or research and development and innovation, which is also needed. But we chose to be more the kind of general organization with specific expertise in different countries, different areas. So for example, here in the UK, of course, there were already lots of other organizations active in this field. So it took a year or two to find our kind of real niche. And Jimmy Pearson, who's the director, also maybe worthwhile talking to, came up with the idea of school plates and trying to change the menu for schools. And initially it was a bit difficult. You had to approach schools to convince them to change the menu, whatever. But now it's like we almost can't keep up with the demand from the local authorities. Sometimes they have hundreds of schools in their region, and we can have a big impact at once. And of course, these meals are served every day to, I think, over 1 million children per day. So this impact is accumulating now. I think we've changed over 40 million meals from meat-based to plant-based or veggie. So that is really great to see, because it will have a knock-on effect for a long time. And we get the children early. We get them to think and start normalizing plant-based food a lot more. So it's that's really the kind of flagship program here in the UK, whereas in other countries they have other flagship programs, like nutrition courses in Czechia, for example, a New Food Forum, bringing businesses together. As you know, I think AVP, now ProVeg Portugal, also works in schools. So there's a lot of synergies, and we work together to share best practices and learn from each other's mistakes, but also what works well. So it's really great to have all those players in one organization.
Absolutely, and we need associations like yours that do it, because when I left banking to become a nutritionist and work as a coach full time, the first thing I did actually was reaching out to my friends who had kids and went to schools and did talks about how adding more plants to the meal. It wasn't even about plant-based solely, but actually just adding more vegetables and lowering the processed and the sugars. And I just realized what a need there is for it, for the parents to be educated, for the kids to change the taste, to make them see how this is very cool. And and one person like me couldn't do it, but and I really saw that the reality of it. So we need associations to have an army of committed people that really care to create these programs. And as you said, the demanding is becoming big, and you can see we don't have enough people that do it. So this is actually an opportunity for a lot of people to actually get into more social work that also has an impact on the future generation at really root grass level, because it's like you get them as kids. So it's amazing to do that. And yeah, the value of it is amazing. When it comes to companies and budget, actually, you mentioned sometimes the budget is an issue. I must say we need to push a little more, because budget is definitely there. I cannot tell you how much money I leave on the table because I have a decent following on Instagram. I get brands coming up to me all the time asking me to endorse their products, and I have a really serious rule that unless I use it myself, I believe in it and aligns with my values, I don't care how much money they offer, I don't take it. So I only really have 4 companies that I would say good products, like one actually Australian, New Zealand protein / also like the superfoods powders. And the reason I took them on is because the ingredients are very, very solid, but also plant-based, and the story behind it. So the founders created it because the daughter of the main founder has MS, and she was taking so many supplements and pills. So they tried to create something that would support her health. And when I met them and interviewed them, you wouldn't tell she had MS. She was super energetic, just came from the gym, and they told her by 40 she'd be in a wheelchair. Well, she's over 40 and she has kids, so it's not, it's amazing what she's doing. And of course, she's still relying on modern medicine, but like nutrition and lifestyle is so important. So that company for me was really, it aligns. Or some herbs, for my naturopathic practice that I really believe are formulated well. And it's hard for people to think, because we have this influencer mindset. And when companies say they don't have the budget, I'm like, if you have budget to pay influencers to share things, then I'm sure you can make a budget to do something right. So it's about maybe priorities more than budget, right?
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is changing, hopefully, this year. I think that, I hope anyway, that the worst was behind us. What we see is that they haven't been able or willing to invest in sponsoring events and things like that. So we also need to work with that reality. But I think there's a renewed sense of urgency and interest. And I think you're right. We need to also hold them to account and say, come on, it's a joint effort. We're now really focusing on the retailers. That's going in the right direction. And I think once other brands see that, and they will probably also they want to be part of the action, I think. So maybe this is the way in, again, back to the brands by working with the retailers. And we won't give up, of course, but at the same time, if you become too much of a nag, then they don't want to work with you. So it's always that delicate balance. But I totally agree with you. They still have interest in marketing and promotion. So the way that's done can be done in various ways. And yeah, absolutely. What we're also excited about is, in the European Union now, Denmark, you've probably seen them maybe discussed already on your podcast, how they have a national action plan on plant-based, and we want to scale that up to other countries in Europe and also European level. We just published yesterday with, I think, 130 other organizations across Europe, a letter to call on the European Commission to also commit to this action plan. And that's great, to see the collaboration with all the other NGOs, but there are also businesses behind that also support this idea. So it's, I think it's getting back on track again. After a couple of challenging years, it's coming back this year.
It is. I mean, I was so proud of the municipality of Braga. I sent them the plant-based treaty because COP never speaks about nutrition and the impact of animal agriculture. So they started the plant-based treaty, and I sent it to the team, environmental team, and the mayor in Braga, where I organized the events. And the first thing was a pushback. Like, we cannot tell people what to eat, and it's really like people are free. And I said, okay, I understand that. I totally understand it and totally appreciate it. We're not telling people what to eat, though. We're trying to be more mindful because it is a difference. And I kind of tapped into the cultural. It's like, Portugal has always been proud of having the best animal products because of the way that you guys farm in a sustainable way. I'm just rolling my eyes because it's like, okay, we can have an argument about that. But, and people that mostly eat animal products, they'll go to the supermarket and they buy products that are not sustainable. So we have to talk about, careful operations. We have to talk about the reality of agriculture. There are millions of pigs that get slaughtered every day just in Portugal. So we have to talk about the impact, and they signed it. They signed the plant-based treaty.
Amazing.
I was so proud of them, and it's moving. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet because it's not fair. Like it's always a team effort. But like I'm so proud of myself for kind of putting these things through and creating a relationship with them, because I think seeing me not being aggressive about the conversations and actually quite just wanting to really be reasonable and inspiring, I think it makes them more comfortable than feeling attacked and judged. And that's the way forward. So this is why even how ABP does it. I mean, I'm a member, so when I get, or Pro Veg Portugal now, when we get the newsletters, they're always on a positive note too. It's always about the things that are happening and the recipes and how to have more fun with it. And even, Nuno Albim, who left as a president, and now he has his association, even when he posted about one supermarket here in Portugal, Pingo Doce, who on their website say that they use very sustainable and green practices, especially for chicken. And he's an investigator now. His association is an investigator association. So they went and see how they actually source their chickens. And it was shocking. But even then, he manages to share it in a way that is not aggressive. And it's positive. And he does it with, there is a little bit of humor in there. And of course, sarcasm. But not like, look at this. It's more like, well, if we say one thing and then we do the other, does that make sense? And I think a lot of people just were like, whoa, so my chicken is not grass-fed and free range, And that was a very positive thing to see. So these actions are moving. And I think, as you said, slowly after a couple of challenging years, especially after the pandemic, where people were just scared of doing anything new, is starting again. And we need to take advantage of that wave so that we can create a ripple effect.
Yeah, I totally agree. And congratulations on Braga and the plant-based treaty. I think that's a great example. And it shows you that you can do this with more municipalities, because sometimes it's more difficult to get the change on national and let alone like EU level. But at local level, you can get much more change quickly. So maybe that could be replicated across other cities in Portugal. And I think it's a great template that you've shown, like the way you do it, the way you approach. Yes, you get pushback, but you overcome it. And by being friendly and reasonable, all those things that you mentioned. So that's the way we also try to approach. And we can't get the change without that dialogue. So we really need to, we see the change in politics across Europe. And of course, we need to respond to that reality. And if we're just going to throw our hands up in the air and say, okay, we can't work with these people, then we won't get that change. So we need to find a common ground. Will be new ground, more like food safety, food security, independence, in Europe, food sovereignty, all those kind of words that they care about. And they are still relevant because, local food production will also help the environment and maybe reduce some food miles. So investing in local protein crops like more soya in Europe, or hemp or millet or other crops, whatever that we can grow, all makes sense, both from that local perspective and protectionist view, but also from an environmental perspective. So there's always things that we can use to talk to people with different values, I think.
Actually, you mentioned something that I think we need to tap into, which is the soy crop agriculture, because of course the counter arguments to us vegans using tofu and tempeh and just soy products is, well, but that's destroying the planet. Can we give them a differentiation between a GMO crop that is commercialized and used for different for example, animal feed versus the organic soy that is used for human consumption?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important question. And of course, in Europe, you don't have GMO. So that's already, all the soy that's grown here is great. But in the US, that's much more common. And also, as you said, most of the soy grown there does go to animal feed rather than human use. So it's, wherever you live, I think it's important to look for ideally non-GMO. We, as plant-based organizations, or ProVeg specifically, are not necessarily against GMO. It's a personal choice. We're not promoting it either. It's just we're not kind of neutral on that. But we do see that, you know, with the push in Europe for more organic foods, this is a great option, I think, for more soy to be grown in Europe organically, and other products as well, because that will benefit the soil, that will benefit reduced pesticide use, etc. So it's really, really good development, I think. But pretty much all of the products that you buy here in Europe have European soy beans, I think. Maybe not all, maybe not 100%, but brands like El Pro, I think, yes, do. And we actually did, because we had a campaign a few years ago, or we still have the project, but now it's less of a campaign, it's more behind the scenes, to get plant-based milk into schools as part of the EU school scheme. And some of the pushback was around, grown soy with GMOs or grown overseas or whatever. And then we did an analysis of the main brands in Europe, and pretty much all of them are grown in Europe. So that was news to the policymakers in Europe. They hadn't thought about it. They just, again, had an opinion without knowing the facts. And we put it out there. And at some point, the Agricultural Commission, the EU Commission, actually acknowledged our findings from our reports as well, like consumer preferences. So they do look to us. They may not agree, but we do kind of look at the facts, and it's really important. Oh, speaking about facts, just want to do a quick plug for our foodsystemdata.org, because it looks really great for any advocate who wants to use infographics or wants to look up what's the current state of animal use or water use, land use. We have these great facts on foodsystemdata.org. We want to expand that a bit with more fact sheets, but I think this is really great tool for advocates and policymakers to kind of get to the facts, and it's very well researched and nicely presented. So
we will put it in the show notes. I think this is a resource everybody needs anyway, because it is confusing to look at data if you don't know how to look at it, and also especially because it comes with a massive amount of words in reports. So I'm like, let's go straight to the point. I think that's really helpful. You definitely, I think the approach and how you're looking at it is positive. I just wonder, do you guys have a way perhaps to put forward the need for organic food? We talked about wanting more organic, but there is this divide with the organic and I love organic food. It tastes different for sure. And I grow some food, so I know how really the difference, but it can be quite unobtainable for some people because financially it's more expensive. And I wonder how we can promote so that these foods are not, as expensive, they become more mainstream. What would be the strategy? And I don't know if you're looking at it from ProVeg as well. And the other thing is, how do we stop places like coffee shops from charging an extra for using soy milk? Because, why does soy milk have to cost more than cow's milk,
Yeah, good questions. So organic is, again, not quite our remit, and we really try to focus on getting more plants into people's menus and diets rather than where they come from. I do hear you that it's, an important aspect, and we sometimes get a little bit of pressure from the organic movement that we should really focus on that more. It's hard, isn't it? Because, it's so expensive, and we have to be realistic about it. So it is a bit exclusive for people with higher incomes, I would say. And I wish it wasn't so. I wish it was available for everyone, because everyone deserves good food. But so there are, of course, also products that are, not necessarily certified organic, but could have lower pesticide and insecticide use. So maybe those products are more affordable for people. We have occasionally supported calls for, on organic matters, but it's not like our main mission. Sometimes you have to make these choices, right? Like, what do you focus on? And then as to the question about, the surcharge, it's kind of outrageous. I agree with you. And we have seen some chains making change and actually either equalizing it, or ideally in a few places, but it's very exceptional. They've now made the dairy the surcharge, but it's I actually don't know how many. No, not many. So it should be the other way around. But yeah, we have talked about this as a campaign. We haven't really done that, I think. I think this might be a good one for more campaigning organizations to focus on.
Yeah.
We would support that, of course, but yeah, it's not right.
No, I'm on it, because when I go to the coffee shop, I'm like, I just want a latte with soy milk, and I'm like, okay, it's 50 cents more. I'm like, dude, your coffee is already €3.50. Like, are you kidding me?
It's getting more and more expensive.
Yeah.
No, it's not right.
No, so it's fantastic. Well, you have associations that are organic and want to push for that, but then I would say we need to speak to them too, because they do charge companies or producers a lot of money to have their organic stamp of approval. So it needs to come from them too, that they become a little bit less expensive, so that it's more affordable for brands to be like, oh, we are actually certified organic. I think that's also a missing link. So everybody has to kind of work together with that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they charge, but I think the problem probably is more the scaling problem. Look, it's still quite niche, the organic farming. I get some of or most of my veg from an organic delivery box scheme, and I enjoy that. But yeah, it is much more expensive. And then there's also two forms of organic, of course. One still uses animal products and manure, and the other one is completely vegan organic, where you use green manures and only compost and everything. And but that is even more niche. That's almost not available. So it's something that would be good to look into as part of the solution, but it's not scaled up. And I think that's where the biggest cost is, because it's just not like all the fields are being, and here in the EU basically is still very much subsidized by the Agricultural Commission, that they kind of incentivize more intensive farming systems rather than the kind of less intensive production systems. So
yeah, you're right, and that's a very big point. Let's follow the money sometimes. Really. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest change, actually. Not so much. Yeah, there's the scheme, of course, but yeah, I think that's minor, the label itself, but it's more the scaling up and the subsidies from the EU.
Yeah. So what is the future for ProVeg? I mean, you already hinted to it, the projects and the aspirations, but in the next year, what can we see ProVeg doing, and how can people actually support?
Great question. Yeah, they can support in multiple ways. Of course, donate or maybe get involved and support the national office. We have now offices in nearly 15. We're about to launch the 15th very soon, and then actually working already on another country as well for a bit later down this year. So that expansion is happening. We're very excited about that. Being more visible in the global south now, and with offices in Malaysia, Nigeria, Brazil. So that's really exciting. We are also going to strengthen how we work together, because as you grow so quickly, we do collaborate well, but it could be optimized further. So how we really respond to, for example, funding calls and quickly getting together on proposals. In the past, it's been more on a national level. We want to now bring that more to the international level, and that brings some challenges. So we're working on, improving the whole operation of our organization, and I think that's where we're at now, in that kind of nearly 15 countries, more than 240 people globally. You need to invest in that foundation as well as expand. So in terms of programs, of course, later down this year, in November, we'll have COP30 in Brazil, so that will be a big feature. We're working, as I mentioned earlier, the EU policy plan and national action plans on plant-based proteins. So that's very exciting. The retail engagement. Food services rankings have been very productive and resulting in food service, fast food ranking, companies doing more options for consumers, and chef training is always something that carries on. That's always needed wherever you are, which country, like as mentioned, in the UK, Portugal, Belgium. But yeah, these are the main projects. Veggie Challenge. We want to also get Veggie Challenge more into corporates, into companies that do that as a team, and then you can kind of set teams up against each other or whatever to have a bit of friendly competition. And apparently that is more effective than doing it individually, the challenge. So that's something we're also going to scale up a bit this year.
Nice.
So, yeah.
It takes a village.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing. Very positive, very uplifting. I only see, the best that can come out of this, and how I think people will really get a sense of pride when they commit to something so wonderful and see the results. So thank you for your work. I can't wait to see you again in person. And yeah, I really thank you. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and definitely I'll be in Portugal at some point. Definitely, and yeah, hopefully October or sometime soon.
Perfect. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Jasmine. Jasmine, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you everyone for staying on. It was such a pleasure to discuss such an important topic. And of course, it's very multifaceted. We could speak for hours about different sides of how ProVeg works and what we can do to support the planet, and also diving into conversations that may feel a little bit uncomfortable about animal agriculture and sustainability. But trust me when I say these conversations need to be had, because ultimately the point is that we are ushers of this planet and we have a responsibility here. So learn more about Jasmine's work and ProVeg. I've linked everything in the show notes for you to access. And guys, I can't wait to have the next guest next week. So stay tuned, share, give us a review, help us grow so we can have more and more amazing speakers. Bye.